We're all here to get the most out of our hi-fi system, our hi-fi musical experience, or home theater. But how do you build the perfect system with all these different variables, different products, different budgets? Well, today we're going to talk about that. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about how to build your dream system. Budget. Obviously, we cannot buy a system, or you can't buy a system, without money, unless you're doing some type of bargaining or trading of goods. Maybe you have a dozen chickens because eggs are $5 a dozen now, and that's worth a lot of money. They're good egg producing chickens. You could trade that for maybe a whole stack of Macintosh gear and some old ADS speakers if you have a dozen chickens. If not, you may have to do it the old fashioned way, and that's with currency. Regardless of whether you're using chickens or money to buy your new system, you have to understand how much of it that you have. But just because you don't have a huge lump sum of cash doesn't mean you can't get started on your hi-fi journey. If you want to buy a system now, then obviously you need to know how much money you're working with. If you're going to buy a system over time, which you can definitely do, especially if you have some stuff laying around the house, then you can think about into the future a little bit. Can I budget $2,000 over the next 2 years? Can I budget $500 in the next month? Can I budget $500 in the next year? It doesn't matter, but you kind of have to know what you're dealing with before you go out and start buying stuff. Otherwise, you may have some nice $500 speakers and nothing to hook them up to. And it's not just speakers, sources, amplifiers, but you also have to think about some things called cables, which I know some people say, or some people think, that you should budget more money than you really need to for cables. With the advent of the Amazon and Amazon Basics RCA cables and speaker cables and things like that, I don't think one needs to budget as much as they used to for cables, but you still have to buy them if you don't have any laying around the house. So keep that in mind. I would start a I almost said something, spreadsheet. I almost said something else. I would start a spreadsheet, or you can do it on a piece of paper, and just put each component that you need and probably weight it by most important. If you have an old set of speakers laying around, then maybe your amp's the most important. Maybe the DAC's the most important. And then just do some good old-fashioned arithmetic and have your budget and start to see how much money you are working with. Like it or not, even though there are a lot of products that are very high value and very inexpensive, you still need to have your budget in mind before you get started. Location, location, location. It's important in real estate transactions. It's important in movies. It's also important for your hi-fi system. Are you putting it in a den? Are you putting it in a barn or garage? Are you putting it in the doghouse? Maybe you live in the doghouse because you're buying so much hi-fi gear. Huh? Actually, location is very important because you're going to need to know how much horsepower that you need or don't need from your system in general, depending upon what room you're putting it in. If it's in a 5x5 room with no windows, maybe a bomb shelter, maybe you don't need as much power as you think you do. However, if you're in a 20x30 open concept room from a really cool new house, then you may need to have some juice. Not necessarily from a power perspective, but from a speaker perspective. So you got to keep the end in mind when you're thinking about a new system. Is this a desktop system? Well, if it is, then you may want to look at different products. If you want something in the office to play some sweet, sweet tunes while you're in between Zoom calls and going over budgets for your awesome company, then you may not want to have an 80-pound vintage Macintosh taking up the entirety of your desk. You may want something smaller, like a very high quality Class D amplifier from, I don't know, IEMA, SMSL, maybe the A2 Mini from Emotiva. A lot of things you can choose from. But keep the end in mind. Do you have space or don't you have space? That's really the crux of this issue, is how much space are you working with? Is this a one and done system, or are you going to build upon it over time? I would guess that most of us, if you're watching The Cheap Audio Man, probably want to build out a very nice system over time. You could have $1,000 though, and that's your budget. You're going to spend it once and you want a system. That's pretty cool too. For me personally, I like to be able to do things over time because not only do I like to enjoy wonderful music, but I also like to tinker around with, I don't know, different components. I like to build things over time. I like to research. I like to watch videos, watch reviews. I like to talk to people on the interwebs about the different products that I'm interested in. And if that's you, well, then you might want this may be just a perpetual thing for you into perpetuity, that you're constantly looking at new pieces of equipment. And that's fine. You don't need, that's part of the fun, right? It's like the hunt. But if you're going to build things over time, then you may want to put most of the budget towards a single component that you can use that has some, I don't know, future-proofness, but something that you can build upon. Whether that's something with preamp outs, maybe a modular DAC. Maybe you're going to take your front speakers and when you get new ones, put those in the back. So those become your rear surround speakers now. Either way, kind of know what you're going to be doing. Have a plan of action. Do you want the utmost inconvenience, or do you want something a little bit more complicated and frustrating? If you want the utmost inconvenience, there's a lot of options for integrated amplifiers, some even including streamers like the SVS Soundbase Pro, which is a great product. However, it has an internal DAC, it has an internal streamer. So you can't really improve upon that unless you're starting to think about separate components that you're going to plug into it later, which you can definitely do. However, separates are so affordable now that personally, for me, I think that's the best way to build out a great system now and over time, because you can pull out that affordable DAC later and add something that is even better. You want tone controls? Well then add an EQ. You got your $60 phono preamp, but now you want to get a $500 phono preamp? Well, you can do that. And then you can take that other component and sell it. Or give it to someone that needs hi-fi equipment that's not as fortunate as you are. Or move it into a different room. That's why I love separates, because they are separated out and you can add and delete and improve upon that system whenever you want to. Learning your tastes. And this is one of the most difficult things in hi-fi, is you don't really know what you like until you hear it. And sometimes when you think you like something and then you hear it for a longer amount of time, then you discover you don't like that anymore. Think bright speakers or speakers that are very exciting on top or in the upper mid-range. They sound great initially, but after about an hour or two of spirited listening around 90 decibels, SPL, you've learned that you hate that sound because it hurts your ears. It's painful to listen to music through those speakers. You gotta know what you like, but you can't know what you like until you try a few things. If you've been doing this for a few years, then you probably know what sound signature you like. However, it's still difficult because you don't know exactly what the sound signature is. You can listen to idiots like myself and they can describe the sound signature, but until you get it into your home, in your room, on your electronics, if we're talking about speakers, then you really don't know what it sounds like until you've experienced it. Plus, we all have different hearing. Some of us may have spent significant times in a tube under the Pacific Ocean. Maybe we have hearing loss. Maybe you grew up on a farm. Maybe you went to too many concerts growing up and you have some hearing loss challenges. Well, in that case, speakers are going to sound even different. There's nothing that replaces listening to the products in your home, on your system, in your room, with your hearing. That's why it's important to buy from a place that has a return policy, or buy something used that's depreciated enough that if you don't like it, you can resell it. And maybe you can actually make a little bit of money. But used hi-fi gear, not an investment. You can buffer how much money you lose, because if you're buying it low on the depreciation curve, then maybe you'll get your money back on it. But don't go into it with the thought process that, ooh, I'm going to flip this hi-fi gear, make some money. Maybe on some vintage stuff you could do that, but don't do that because you're gonna lose you're gonna lose money flipping hi-fi gear. What were we talking about? Oh, that's right, auditioning gear. I would buy from somebody that has a return policy, and a liberal one at that. I know Crutchfield has a 60-day return policy. I know Amazon obviously has a return policy. So don't be afraid to buy more than one product that you're interested in, and then keep the one that you like and send back the ones you don't like. If you're doing business with Crutchfield, you can even talk to their customer service and say, this is what I'm going to be doing. So prepare yourselves. I'm buying a few of these products, but most of them are coming back. They're usually pretty cool with that. But you gotta kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince. You gotta try out a lot of stuff before you know exactly what it is that you like. And your preferences may change. That's why I like to have 2 different speakers that sound different, so that I get to enjoy my music all over again. And if you're buying bookshelf speakers, well, they don't take up too much space. So you can put them in your closet, under the bed, in the attic. Keep them at your mom's house. Unless you live in your mom's house, then you can keep them at your mom's house. Blow your budget on your speakers or your amp. And when I say amp, I usually mean something like an integrated amp with limited, I don't know, DACs and stuff like that. You don't have to. There's some good stuff out there. Or your speakers. Because those are the 2 components that you can kind of build upon. A turntable, a DAC, things like that, those are probably the components that are most likely to be upgraded or changed out later. However, if it's a decent turntable, you can upgrade the cartridge later. I think speakers and amplifiers are where you can spend the best money. But sources also make a huge difference. For me, if I was just starting out and I was building out my dream system, I would start with the speakers or with the amplifier before I did anything else. There are some integrated amplifiers, like the TA1 from Emotiva, that does have preamp outs. There are receivers that have preamp outs as well. So when you get more money, you can use that receiver as an AVR processor or as a preamp. So there are some products that can grow with you once you have some more money. You can also relegate speakers to a different room or a different position if you are building out a home theater system. So keep that in mind. There are some speakers out there, like the little tiny satellite speakers, that I kind of pass on because that's their only purpose. They're not, you can't take those and go put them on your desk and have a decent system. I mean, you can, it's just not going to sound very good. But smaller bookshelves are a good place to start because then those can be moved to the back. You even use for like Atmos upward firing speakers. If you just put a box and angle them up. Point is that you can use those later if you're so inclined. Normally those little satellite speakers, you're not really using them later. Bringing this full circle, know what your budget is and know what your goals are. Those are really the 2 biggest things that you need to understand when you're building out your dream system. Even if you don't have a huge budget, it doesn't matter. You can build things out over time. You can go on the used market and get yourself going. You can get involved with different communities. Chances are people are selling things in those communities. And in my community, people just give stuff away to people in need. So if you're just getting started, don't despair because there are options available for you. And if you're just you just want to listen to music in the kitchen, dare I say a Bluetooth speaker may be the thing for you. If you're not really sitting down and intently listening, you just want some background music, get a couple of Bluetooth speakers. But if you know yourself, if you know your goals, and you know your budget, and you know your room, then you can build out a wonderful system over the next couple of months or the next couple of years, maybe even the next decade. I hope this helped you. If you liked this video, please like it. And thank you for watching, even if you don't like the video, if you made it this far. If you're new, please subscribe. We have over 600 videos. I think there's going to be something just about for everyone, unless you don't like hi-fi, which in that case, you probably shouldn't be watching my channel. You can support the channel by signing up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudiman. Every Saturday night we have Patreon-only Zooms, Patreon-only Discord, Patreon-only Facebook. You can use the links in the description. Those are affiliate links, which means if you click and you buy, I get a commission. It doesn't cost you any more. Great way to support the channel. You can also use the thanks button down at the bottom of this video next to the share button. There's a thanks button. You can buy me a cup of coffee, a couple of bucks. Don't feel compelled to buy me anything though. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu unless it's really cool. Binge listen maybe through your new perfect system that you're building over time and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.